guys you deal in this high octane, energy fueled rock music, and then what's always struck me about your stuff is that in your writings that there's very much a softer side to it too that kind of balances that. You have the kind of quieter sections and you have the quieter parts of the songs that help to give it this variety. Which would you say comes more naturally to you as songwriters, the quieter side or the more kind of rocky, energy fueled stuff?
I think both, to be honest. Like like Mark and I, and also Sam, the guitarist, who's sort of the other main songwriter, we grew up playing in like a real riffy, bluesy rock band. Mark was the front man of that band.
Is this Lovers Jump Creek?
Yeah. Done some research. Jesus.
It's still on Spotify.
Yeah, it is. It is still on Spotify. Yeah, so I mean, I feel like we've got rock and roll in our bones from that, but try to write pretty honestly and frankly about things that are happening in my life usually. So I think there's a sort of like softer, more kind of like delicate side to that, other than just headbanging, screaming, you know?
Did you start off as a folky band too? Like I heard when this kind of started off, it was a little bit more in that direction.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, so the way this kind of started was Sam, from playing in Lovers Jump Creek. Sam sort of heard me sing and just asked me to record on this song that he had written. Put the song together, sort of sent it around to a few people, and it ended up in the hands of this company that was putting on a touring company that was putting on this show around high schools in Queensland and New South Wales. They asked us to do this tour, and it was just Sam and I, and we had one song. They're like, "Can you send us a video of your band playing and some of your songs?" And we're like, "Fuck, we better get to it and get those things together." So I had just been on this trip to Mexico, which was pretty epic. I sort of chased a lady across the world to Mexico to confess my undying love, and got stuck in a hotel on the way back. I bought this guitar. It was when all of those hurricanes and stuff. You got stuck somewhere too, Mark. So when all those hurricanes were happening in North America.
Yeah.
So I got stuck for a few days in this hotel, and wrote a bunch of songs, and got back and recorded them with Sam, and got a band together really quickly. And then we sort of we put this band together, put these songs together, and just kind of toured it. So I think the folky sort of influence came from just having that acoustic guitar. And we kind of filled it out with just like stomps and claps, and recorded it in this little dingy warehouse that we used to rehearse in. I guess the sound of the band has changed quite significantly since then. We don't have that up online anymore.
Were those songs that you wrote in the hotel, were they kind of directly related to that experience of chasing someone halfway across the world?
Yeah, they were.
Do you care to elaborate?
It's like, they were about sort of, heartbreak and being a young idiot.
It's a very kind of Jack Kerouac artist thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've always written, this is as an observer of you as well as being a member of your band, you've always written songs that are very expository. You're very frank and very sincere when you're writing songs to the service of the song, and often at the detriment of when you have to talk about the content of them, because in many cases are things that are necessarily fraught and challenging for you to like talk about. I think that maybe that informs how you actually lyricize, is that things that are hard to talk about are a lot easier to put to melody. I don't know. That's my observation as being around you.
I think I've been noticing that a lot more recently as well, like with all of the time off not playing our first sort of gig back after the first lockdowns at like the end of last year. It was like, because we've been a band that's toured a lot and played a lot, and you sort of like lose sensitivity to what the songs are about, and sort of disconnect from the lyrical content, I guess, and just perform. But yeah, that in December, those gigs, like it felt so raw and overwhelming doing those songs again after so long, and kind of reconnecting with the meaning of them.
You were playing a couple of shows last week as well, right?
Like we did,
Sydney,
yeah.
Melbourne.
Yeah, Sydney, Melbourne, Newcastle, and Ballarat, which again, it had been a really long time. It was really It was really wonderful to play again. It's actually the last show that we played was in Newcastle, and the girl who was in Mexico came. This is like a very long time ago. This relationship ended, but she came to the show, and that was like another experience, reliving those songs.
Did you know she was going to be there?
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Not like a La La Land moment when someone kind of walks in at the end and you're not expecting them.
No.
Everything goes into slow-mo.
No, that would have been terribly confusing.
Are you still on the stand-up drum kit live?
Yes. Yeah, we're still doing the split-up drum kit stuff. I just think it's the funnest way to play. You know, I don't want to sit down and get to sort of dance about and have a good time.
That must knack you, though. Is it not?
Yeah, 100%. It's exhausting. We were talking about this because Sam plays the kick drum. He's a guitarist, so he plays the kick drum, plays guitar, does a lot of harmonies as well. Like, he has a really sort of like centralized workout when we play. Like, he just has his right foot just stomping on that kick all night. So it's like, you know, it's very, very localized to the one area. So whenever we play a gig, like, he gets a really sore calf, and that's his workout. I feel like I'm a little bit lucky because it's sort of spread out, you know? It's like there's some a bit of an arm workout, and it's also like cardio because I'm singing and dancing around and stuff. At least it's not, you know, centralized to one super painful area.
It's like generally challenging for you physically, but for him it's very grueling.
Painful. Yeah. Like torture to him.
Yeah, torture is another way.
Do you find that impacts your songwriting? Do you think about that during the writing process?
Yeah, I think it definitely did when we first started. We did have a drummer when we first started the band, and whilst we were trying to find a replacement, we sort of figured out how to play the songs without a actual drummer anyway, so we just kept doing that. And I think when we first started doing it, it did really impact writing. Just in the drum parts that we were writing, mostly just, I think we try to keep it pretty simple, like lots of fall to the floor kick, nothing that would sort of like detract too much from any of the other parts, just to keep it a little bit easier for ourselves. But as we've gotten used to it, we just write as we like, basically, and then we learn the parts as we go. It can make it really difficult, but it's just, you know, it's another thing. It's just another fun little challenge to overcome, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, like Season, which you released last month, a few weeks ago. Yeah, it's kind of got the drums. I like you say that you've got the floor to the floor, and that the drums kind of pulsate the whole way through it. Yeah, for sure. Until that very end part where it sort of opens up a little bit. But yeah, that's mostly electronic as well. So we get to be a bit lazy in that one. We don't play as much.
It's been really fun with you and Sam playing 2 to 3 instruments essentially each, and occasionally, you know, I play bass and then there'll be like a harmony or something, and I'll be like, oh geez, Jazz, I don't think I can play that rhythm while singing that harmony. I think those 2 rhythms are just like, they don't work in my brain. And he just kind of looks at me like, you fucking kidding me? Like, you can do it.
How does it function for you as well when because you're based all over Australia, right? Like, you all kind of tend to live in different cities.
Yeah.
How does that work creatively? Do you tend to kind of all work on it individually, and then when do you get together and kind of have that space to work on it as a group?
Mostly in the last few years, the songwriting's been like pretty individual. So we've been working on an album for a couple of years, and that's mostly my material. And then Sam's been working really hard on basically a new album he's got ready to go, which we'll record in a couple of months. So it's been just a matter of sort of writing, getting together, learning the songs, and then doing it that way. Yeah, beginning of 2019, we started recording this album. So we organized like we hired out a little farm and got together there and sort of fleshed out all of the parts together. So it wasn't just Sam and I, we did it all together. And yeah, we've spent so long playing together that I think we really just kind of get each other as musicians as well. Like, I think when I'm writing stuff, I'm not just like, I'm thinking about Cron and Isaac and Mark and the parts that they would play, and, you know, harmonies that they would be comfortable singing. So I think it's sort of like, it's gone from a band that was we would write everything together in the same room and really flesh stuff out together. It's gone from that to more individual, but like I think there is still, there's still the thought of including everyone, even though they're not involved in a certain way.
Yeah, because you've put that groundwork in initially, it means you're able to do it a little bit more remotely now.
Yeah. And then when we tour, it's sort of just a matter of getting together for a rehearsal or two beforehand and then do the shows, and it's good. It's good to go.
Do you feel a part of any musical community as a band then if you're all kind of spread out in various different places across the country?
Yeah, you know what? Funnily enough, I actually feel more part of some sense of musical community because of our sort of disparate locations, because everyone, wherever you live, you sort of develop your own little network of people and friends and musicians when you're playing in bands. So it's really cool for me to be living in Melbourne, where I have my own sort of little community of people, and I feel like I'm at home, and then going to New South Wales where everyone, Sam and Con and Isaac have their own sort of community, and I get it's so welcoming when you're. It's almost like it's all right. I'm out. He's with me, sort of thing. So I do actually feel like it's been in many ways really, really a nice experience. The being able to go between cities and still feel kind of at home, because it's like visiting a friend with in their family home. Mum and dad aren't upset that you've brought a friend home. They're just psyched to wrap you up in a big warm hug.
You've got bases everywhere.
That's all right. Yeah. It's really nice.
That farm you mentioned as well where you recorded, whereabout was that?
It was a place called Pecolbin. It's just outside Newcastle.
And is this where you turned like the barn into a recording space?
Yeah, it was just a little Airbnb. I'm looking at a photo of it now. Actually, I've got it on my desk on top of my speaker. It's beautiful. Yeah, it's just like a little Airbnb on this property, and just outside of Newcastle. We could just make as much noise as we wanted to for the week.
It was cool in a lot of respects. For that reason, it was also just cool for us to be spending a week plus together, just hanging out
together
as a band.
Yeah.
One thing I'm sure you remember, Jazz, is that as we were recording drums and guitars and stuff, no problem. But then when we were recording vocals, occasionally we'd have to stop because there was a rooster that would walk under the house and start crowing, and so you'd hear this rooster in the background of all the vocal takes.
You need to get him on the record, feature him on there somewhere.
We're on a bunch of royalties.
He's definitely in there somewhere.
How hot was that bar, and when were you recording? I can't imagine in Australia that must have been pretty crazy.
So hot, man. It was January.
That's summer for you, right?
Yeah, it was stinking hot, but good time. Sam and Mark are coming up to the island in a couple of pending Victoria opening, coming up to the island in a few weeks to start recording again. So we'll do a similar vibe, I think.
Just find a space and kind of convert it a little bit.
Yeah, well, I've got a space in my house, luckily, so we can just do it here.
So Season, we kind of mentioned that earlier. Is that the fifth single off the debut record that came from those sessions in the barn?
Yeah, it is. It is. I don't think we ever intended on releasing 5 singles before putting an album out, but COVID, so we did, but it's nearly there.
So what are the 5? We've got Season, Hold Choke, Tessellate, Forever My Love, and Villain. Very
good. Yeah. I'm impressed. I'm also glad because I'm not sure that I would have been able to name them.
It's interesting because if we look at your EPs, the 2 EPs that you put out initially, there's always a clear thread kind of linking all of the songs in them. Like on Deficiency, every song is about something you're without, something you're lacking. On Limbo, there's this thread of uncertainty kind of being looked at in all of the songs. Is there a similar thing at the heart of this album? Is there a thread that you can trace linking all of the tracks on it?
Not so much lyrically, I don't think. I think because all of these songs are written at such different points in time, they maybe don't have a common theme running through them, but we approached this album with like a 70s horror theme in mind. We've sort of been approaching most of the releases like that, like trying to create the soundscape of what a 70s horror film would kind of sound like, and trying to bend the art to sort of look like that as well. Yeah, so there's lots of kind of we try to go really 70s, especially with all the drum sounds. So lots of sort of, like fat, flat snares, and quite a bit of dissonance in the arrangement to reflect that as well. I think lyrically, like, a lot of the songs are about sort of loss or despair, or over the last few years, I haven't had the best time in my brain, so a lot of it's sort of about suffering with poor mental health and things like that.
Is that what kind of drew you to the horror soundscape? Did that feel like a reflection of some of the things that you were feeling?
Yeah, I think so. I think Sam and I were just kind of brainstorming like what everything sort of sounded like, where it fit, so we could try and just angle everything like visually as well into the same sort of box, just to just to have a bit of a target, because I think sometimes with our music it's hard to sort of pinpoint genre-wise where it sits. So it's nice to have some sort of abstract target to shoot when, sonically maybe the songs are a bit sort of all over the joint.
Kind of following on with that horror idea as well, I think, is it Villain that you kind of have the samples from old films on? I don't know if I heard Vincent Price, or
I don't know if it's Vincent Price. I can't remember what it is, but
it's that kind of voice.
Yeah. There's some horror stuff on there.
When you said as well that you wanted to recreate, or you wanted to not recreate, but go for that kind of 70s feeling, to like the drum sounds and stuff, did you look back and kind of investigate how they achieved that sound at the time, or how did you kind of go about doing that?
Yeah, we did. We sort of looked into, I guess, like tuning, so everything's sort of tuned pretty low. We kind of smashed everything through some preamps to get that grit.
Use the papers on the toms.
Yeah, papers on the toms. I think same thing with the toms, like messed around with like taking resonance skins off, and same deal, like cranking them through preamps.
What about for you on the bass as well, Mark? What were you kind of looking to go for tone wise?
So much of what the bass recording process for me has been like is more about preserving the integrity of the sound of it, so that it's a reasonably clean palette for Sam once he starts mixing it. Because we're playing around with so many sounds while we're recording the drums and all those other things, and the bass is typically pretty early in the piece to put down, that sometimes we haven't really nailed down exactly what the aesthetic is. So it's less about, in my experience with Bad Pony particularly, trying to pursue a certain tone in the room, as it is, okay, how do I give Sam the best launching platform to mix from? It's like it's about giving him everything that he can play with, rather than taking things away and having to make him mix it kind of against the bass sound, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you're very much writing for the song.
Yeah.
I mean, that's often what they say, isn't it? That the bassist has the most perspective on it, because you're the one who very much has to kind of, you're coming in towards the end and writing for the song and finding something that can kind of slot in and have the most impact as a part of the song, if that makes sense. Yeah,
well, and I think that the key thing is having the impact without the impact being evident. Like if you're noticing what the bass is doing, there's a very real risk that it's not actually in service of the song.
Well, if you took it out, you would know.
Absolutely, yeah, of course, yeah.
Because
yeah,
you'd lose that momentum and that drive to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this weird dichotomy of got to be right to fit, got to be good enough that it's a feature without actually being a feature.
However, Forever My Love.
That is the obvious exception at the moment. But Forever My Love, the chorus has a very, what I would call an obnoxious bass part, and it was basically, so there's a really sort of riffy bass part that goes throughout the whole thing. And I don't know if you recall, Jared, it was literally like we were coming back in from lunch, and we were thinking, we've got to do something to this chorus to give it some lift. Picked up the bass and I was actually having a joke. I was like, what if I did this? And Sam, in his eternal wisdom, was like, no, I think that's the part. And I was like, firstly, awesome. That's great for me. That makes me feel good that I've written a part that's, taken the attention of the group. And the second part of me was like, I'm going to have to learn to play this live, and I can barely play it now.
I do remember that. I also remember you wearing your John Farnham Take the Pressure Down t-shirt, which I love.
Probably gave me the strength.
Do you know who John Farnham is, Alex?
I don't.
Has he travelled across the
John
seas?
Farnham.
Farnham.
No.
Yeah, he's a national treasure.
What's he famed for?
Take the Pressure Down.
he's an Australian pop star from like 80s,
late 70s, 80s.
yeah. Very, very, very big power ballady sort of. You might have heard his songs in like
You're the voice,
The Voice, in movies and stuff. But very just mullet heavy pop, and he has a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, it's like cock rock pop. It's like cock pop.
What movies is this stuff
wonderful,
in? What
though.
movies might I have heard it?
Do you know what's the one that Andy Samberg's early one?
Hot Rod.
Hot Rod. Yeah, you remember, there's a scene where they're all walking through the street
shit.
and they all just start
with
singing.
the bagpipes.
Yeah. That's Johnny Farnham.
I'm going to go back and check it out.
Biggest tune.
It's quite stirring.
Yeah, it's good.
To come back to Forever My Love, though, that was the first time you worked with an outside producer as well, right?
Yeah, it was. It was. So we worked with Stephen Schramm on both Forever My Love and Tessellate.
What fueled that decision to kind of bring a producer in at this point in the band's trajectory when you had been self-producing for so long?
We had a few sessions with a record label. They set us up with some producers just to see kind of what would happen. And we had management that really pushed us. They really wanted us to enlist the help of some producers. I think we all are really big fans of what Stephen Schramm does, and he's worked with some like quite a few friends of ours, like Halcyon Drive and Wolves. Who else has he done, Marky?
In terms of
like
friends,
a Paul Kelly album.
Paul Kelly. He's done San Cisco. Yeah, he's done some really.
I know San Cisco.
Yeah.
So it's some really great bands and really great sounds, really great mixes. So yeah, I think we were just really interested to see what he could bring to the mix because, you know, Sam's like complete, as brilliant as he is completely self-taught. I feel like he goes through stages of being really confident and then some stages of being maybe not unconfident, but
A little bit of self-doubt.
Yeah, a little bit of self-doubt.
You need a bit of self-doubt.
I think so, for sure. And it was a really cool experience, you know, working with someone else and getting a different set of ears on the songs. I think that's always good.
I reckon that's pretty key. I think that one of the things that was really appealing to me was there's 5 of us and we've been playing music together for so long that sometimes you don't know how many ideas sound good because they sound good to us versus are they a good idea? So it was like bringing a fresh set and a tiebreaker in some cases was an exciting prospect to me.
Yeah, it's like how are you supposed to know what sounds good if you're in your own world, if you're in your own box. So yeah, I feel like we learned a lot from that experience. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you said that it gave you like a fresh perspective on the songs. Did it give you a fresh perspective on your own process as well and the way that you go about working as a group?
I think so. I think that as maybe not as much of a driving songwriter as say Jazz and Sam are. I think it was actually throughout that whole process, not just with Steve Schramm but with some of the other producers. It was a nice experience to come back and I don't know, get a little bit more sort of wind under my wings and be like, oh, I've got ideas. Like I can't, you know, it is good to bring them to the forefront and, you know, to say, oh, what if we did this? What if we did that? It's really easy when you've got songwriters like Jazz and Sam who write really great stuff and come to the table with stuff that they've thought about for a long time. There's a little part of you that's like, oh, I've just thought of this now. You've thought about this more than I have. So having someone go, no, like even if it came to you right now, that's awesome. Let's put it to the floor. I think that was probably a healthy thing for just the jambalaya of ideas. You know, just empowering. Like, doesn't matter.
Creativity.
Yeah, it's the full on creativity, and you know sometimes you don't have to have spent 4 days thinking about it, it could just come to you in the moment, and it's just as powerful if it's in the service of the song. Not that was ever discouraged necessarily within the structure of the band, but it's very easy to fall into a rhythm where it's like, okay, well, there's the song and they've written it, and we just play it as it is,
Yeah, you don't really get the opportunity when, we're writing the way that we do now as well there's only creativity within one human rather than a whole bunch.
Yeah.
I do miss doing that.
Absolutely. We don't get to jam in the room.
Yeah. It's also good having someone run that session. So like having the 5 of us together, and it sort of just removes all of the responsibility of the decision making to someone else as well.
Yeah, it was so good.
Like a referee.
Yeah, exactly.
Like a preschool teacher, really.
Yeah. I think Shram's approach to production was like awesome, and maybe quite similar to our approach as well. Like the grosser the better in a way. Like we'd put some really gross shit in there. Like the drums in Forever My Love are just like smashed to absolute shit. Remember, the guitar tones are like really, really grating, but it fucking works.
There was a lot of like, oh, that's ridiculous, we can't do that. And then like, why? You're like, yeah, no, you're right, it sounds good.
That's when you're doing something right.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it sounds like shit.
When you were working on those songs with Steve, did you know they were going to be for the record?
Yeah, we did. We had demoed them at the farm, and then we redid those. I remember we chose Tessellate because we couldn't quite get it sounding the way that we wanted to get it to sound ourselves. It sort of wasn't big enough, it wasn't raucous enough. And then Steven chose Forever My Love. Yeah, just because I think he chose it because it sort of stood out a little bit. It was much more electronic and sort of poppy than the rest of them.
One really cool thing about those sessions, in terms of like, I guess you're always trying to learn as a musician and as a band, like, oh, what are like the tools in your tool belt? There was one thing that Steve did during that session with both of those two tunes that I think was like such a revelation to me, and I think a revelation to all of us, was he was drawing these really like weird links between the songs and like a good reference track. So like for Tessellate, for example, we were like, oh, here's this tune where it's a bit of a problem child. We think there's something in there. We don't really know how to kind of get it right. And he was like, oh, this is cool. And he showed it and he listened and he was like, oh, this is like Walk Like an Egyptian. And
Walking like an Egyptian.
What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And he was like, no, here. And he just, listen here, it's this and this and it's this structure and this and that. And he was like, it's just it's hook after hook after hook, so look at that and draw a reference from that. Obviously don't try and make it walk like an Egyptian, but like think about the tools they've used and apply it to your song. And that was a huge revelation for me.
I think that's a really cool thing to do, because when it's a song that's so sonically different and has all these other weird, strange linking elements, it's like you also just can make the fucking punky song Walk Like an Egyptian, because Walk Like an Egyptian is nothing like that.
Yeah, it's about taking those ideas into your soundscape as a band, and once you blend them with your personality, it's not going to sound anything like it.
Exactly, yeah.
How do you come upon a word like tessellate?
What do you mean?
Well, I wasn't.
I don't know.
That feels like quite a kind of obscure word to me. It's not one that maybe it's more so in Australia, but it doesn't feel like a word that's very much in the kind of natural language, if that makes sense. It's not a word you would hear someone using on the street.
I don't know. I think I had thought about the content of that song for quite a while. It's about a friend of mine I had when I was growing up in high school. He got really into drugs, and the song's about he tried to hang himself, and he called me up when he tried to do that. The song's about that. Thought about it a lot and have written about it a lot, and it seems really sad to me that he doesn't fit. He doesn't fit into society because of all of the choices that he made when he was a youngin'. Because I've thought about it a lot and tried to put it into words, I think Tessellate was something that really stuck out to me because of the tragedy of him not being able to be an adult anymore.
Does the song arrive quicker when you've already ran it through your mind so much, ran those ideas through your mind so much?
I think so, man. That was one of those songs that just kind of poured out. I don't think I like stopped to think about anything. It was just kind of there, yeah.
Is it different as well approaching a memory that's from further back, as opposed to writing about something when you're in the moment, when you're approaching something that comes from a little bit more in your past? How does that kind of differ in the approach?
I think maybe it depends on the severity of the situation. Like, writing about that, I think because I was so young and I hadn't had a lot of life experience yet, those things seem so intense. And I mean it is pretty intense, but like when you're younger, you feel things a lot more intensely than you do as you get used to negative feelings, trauma, or whatever it may be. Thinking back on those initial things that happened when I was young, like I think it's pretty easy to tap back into that intense feeling, that sort of raw feeling, just because I was so young. It was the first time I was feeling that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, if I was writing about something that happened a couple of years ago, nothing that sort of, super intense has happened in the last couple of years. So, yeah, I don't think I'd be able to tap into it as much. But in saying that, I find writing like such a good release of emotion, and it's a really good way to like just process things and like wrap my head around whatever's going on. So,
is it an immediate release? Do you feel the weight kind of being taken off your shoulders as you're writing it?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I think just putting sort of pen to paper and articulating the feelings is really, really helpful. But I don't think it's a complete release. I think that's the hard thing about writing songs that are so close emotionally, is like you do have to relive it. And it doesn't happen every time you play. I think it's sort of actually rarely kind of happened over the years until quite recently, but do tend to relive at least some of the emotion. It's not so intense all the time, but you'll have nights where you'll be on fire, and then one song comes along and it sort of rocks you a little bit just out of nowhere.
How do you handle that in the moment when it catches you by surprise like that, if you're not anticipating it?
Honestly, I think it's a good thing. Like if you're shut off to that emotion, like what's the point? If you like if I don't mean what I've written, if I'm not feeling it, like why should anyone else listen? You know what I mean?
But then it's also it would be damaging though to relive those emotions every night on stage.
It would be every night. It would be every night for sure. But it's not every night. It's definitely not every night. I think those shows that we played in December, those shows really hit me for some reason. It was kind of fine during the shows. I still had like a really good time. It feels really good to connect with the songs. So I think that's good. It's just afterwards it can be a bit raw. Need lots of cuddles from all my friends.
Like you've tapped into this like network of generally negative feelings when it comes to Bad Pony songs.
Yeah.
And in order to share that, and then it's like, okay, show's over. I'm just being a person now. What a weird.
It hasn't always been like that either, though. I think like really in the last sort of year and a half or whatever, especially being on this island and alone and doing lots of work on myself and being removed from music and removed from friends. I think that I'm a lot more emotionally open, which also means I'm a lot more emotionally sensitive. So I think it's a relatively new thing that I'm still kind of navigating.
It'll be interesting to see if those times when you're brought back to it come more regularly after this, now that you're a little bit more open.
Yeah.
Like once touring's back in full.
Yeah, it will be interesting.
We were talking there, though, about how it can be an immediate release and you can feel that weight being taken off your shoulders when you're tapping into an older experience that you need to get out. How does that function for something like Hold Choke when you're very much in that self-destructive headspace when you're writing it?
I don't know. Like I think being in that headspace is damaging to to everything. I remember writing that song and feeling like just not very attached to the lyrics. I know they're very, very dark, but they were sort of just a bit of a reflection of the headspace I was in at the moment at that point in time. Sorry. So I think when it gets really bad, it's not as much as a release. It's more just a representation of my headspace, I think.
Do you know you're in that headspace when you're writing it, or is that only something you realize afterwards and you kind of look back and realize, oh, I wasn't in a very positive place at that point in my life?
I think both, man. I think that I especially then, I think I realized it, but maybe didn't care, and also didn't realize the severity of it.
Is that where the kind of screamier parts of that song come from as well? You know, the da da da, where you're kind of just having this release. Was that very much tapping into that place?
I wish I could say yes, but I wrote that as a guitar part and Sam screamed it. He's a screamy boy.
Can you write in any state of mind?
I actually tend not to write as much when I'm doing really well, which is hilarious.
So we're actively plotting against him in the band.
What about for you as well, Mark? When you're coming up with parts, can you be in any frame of mind to write them, or do you have to feel like you're in a specific place?
I mean, I think particularly in Bad Pony, so much of, you know, my contribution is reactive to ideas that are already kind of percolating. That it's less of an emotional experience to me. And it's more of a technical experience. I'm like, okay, what are we doing musically here? How can I support that? How can I play around within that? Does this need more from me? Does this need less from me? What I can say is, as someone who's heavily invested in, you know, the well-being of jazz, and as probably my best friend in the world, it's really weird to be in a rehearsal room for him to come in and bring a song that is amazing, born of a really challenging place. So you're fighting these two instincts. One is like, what an amazing song. And there's the other instinct that's like, oh my goodness, my friend is experiencing this horrible pain. So it's this really weird, bittersweet. I mean, it's mostly bitter. You know, the main thing is it sucks that my friend is suffering.
But if you didn't have the band, it would just be bitter. The band is what brings the sweetness to it.
Exactly, absolutely, yeah. At least there's some sweet to it, and at least there's a safe place to explore some things that maybe, you know, and I can't speak for you, Jared, but you know, some things that are maybe hard to verbalize directly. You know, you can explore lyrically in a safe way.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty incredible how safe the Bad Pony space is. Yeah, I feel like we're incredibly supportive and open bunch of humans. I think we're all very, very lucky to have each other, even though we're not, you know, next door to each other anymore. Yeah, I think either any one of us is, you know, just a phone call away at any point in time, which is really lovely. No, not all bands get that. I think like writing music and playing music with people is an incredibly intimate thing to do. So I think it's easy to sort of establish really strong and connected and open relationships with people when you're doing that.
Mark, do you remember when Jared brought Whole Choke into the practice space? What were you kind of thinking at that point? What were your first thoughts?
You know what? Funnily enough, like, it didn't strike me as a particularly dark song so far as they go. I feel like, you know, we've been playing music together for so long in Bad Pony and other things that I've sort of seen a huge spectrum of energy in the songs. And Whole Choke, maybe I was tricked a little bit by the harmony, the harmonic content, the way that the chords are moving around. It is a classic thing that Jared does, which is combine a really heavy theme with
bops,
joyous chords. Yeah, it's this fun sounding thing musically that's exploring this really, you know, dark theme. So yeah, when he brought it to the table, my thought was like, oh, this might be a real banger. The actual depth of it was not that apparent to me at the time.
Why did it become apparent?
Gee, not for a very long time. Probably not till after it was released, and it was in conversations with Jared and with other people sort of pertinent to the song that I was like, oh wow, like I actually see the real themes that you're playing within here. And I was like, then the heaviness hit me. I was like, oh fuck, now I get it. I remember I was sitting on my couch. I can picture it. I was sitting there. It was like a Sunday afternoon, and it just hit me, and I was like, oh, I get it. And it was like, that's so clever. And then I was like, oh, that sucks.
It's not like we don't talk about these things outside.
No, we do. No, absolutely. But we talked about these things, but I didn't connect all those things together. I didn't connect them to Hold Choke until that particular time, and I was like, oh fuck, dude. But here's the thing: we'll talk about like as people, we talk about anything. And then musically we talk about anything, but to make that direct connection, like, oh, by the way, this was about that. It's like that almost seems a little ham-fisted.
Do you think if you come to that understanding earlier of what the song was discussing, you would have written a slightly different part for it in any way? Would it have impacted that approach?
Gee, that song in particular is really one where, the bass is not really it's not a hook instrument in that particular tune. It's very much there to support what's going on. So I think that's a situation where if I sort of tried to elbow in my influence or elbow in, oh no, it needs to be like this to enhance this or that, we might have taken steps backwards in terms of the song itself. I think the beauty of that tune for me is in its relentlessness. It's very straightforward, whilst there's, the hooks are being carried by, your frontline instruments, your guitars and your vocal and your gang vocal. So if I started trying to play slightly more intricate parts, I think that it would actually distract from I think about that song as like a bike pedal. It's just kind of going and going and going and going and going. And if you're pumping this bike pedal and then someone just rings the bell, it's like, well, yeah, I get it, but that's kind of not really necessary right now.
It sounds like what you're saying is you just need to tap into the simplicity of the emotion of it rather than the complexity behind that emotion.
I think so. Well, yeah, in order to, it'd be like trying to write a sincere love note on tie-dye paper. The sincerity is in the content. You don't need to flash it up with extra.
With the fucking excessive metaphor. That's good.
Video for that as well. It's Rotoscope, right?
Yeah. Long-time collaborator friend, Rick. Yeah, he was the complete brains behind that. I didn't even know what Rotoscope was until he done did it.
Do you still teach clay animation?
Where are you getting this from? I do, somewhat. I do it every now and then. I actually got the job from Mark.
Wait, so Mark also teaches clay animation?
That's right. I got him into the game. Yeah, no, yeah. I don't know how I came across the job, but I was doing it for a period of time, and then I was like, oh, yeah, well, I was moving on to something else. And Steve, who is the biggest legend, who was kind of the dude running it, was like, do you know anyone? And I was like, who are my most like perfect suited friends for this? And I thought of Jazz immediately, and
hanging out and playing, making shit with kids all day. Yes, please.
Why did you think Jared was perfectly suited to be a clay animator?
There's this thing that you learn, that you, against your will, learn growing up, that like at a certain point, it's like uncool to be like excited and enthusiastic, which is exactly what like doing workshops with kids calls for. You need to be like embracing the fact that it's kind of fun to be excited and it's cool to be like enthusiastic about stuff. And Jared is one of the few, grown up blokes that I know that will embrace, euphoria. And I was like, that who could be better suited for teaching kids how to make clay animation than someone that is just genuinely excited about doing it.
I feel like that is the highest compliment coming from the most excited, lovable, wonderful Labrador of a human. Thanks, Magaju.
Oh, you're very welcome.
What do you both do now then if you don't teach clay animation?
I teach a bit of music online, and I am pouring beers at the local RSL on Russell Island.
And I do acoustics. So the dream was to design recording studios, which I do. I've done a handful of, but unfortunately, there's not that many studios being built. So yeah, a lot of quarry noise and things of that like, which they're inspiring in their own way.
I imagine that comes in handy though when you have to turn a farmhouse into a makeshift studio space.
Yeah, I mean, I think that. Well, this is the thing. I always look back on the last year, 2 years, and like, oh, I wish I'd known that then. Wish I'd known that then. It's definitely something that I'm really glad that I know. It's made me a far better musician, I think, because thinking about instead of just. I mean, as I sort of said, playing thing that's the most interesting to me, what I'm actually trying to do in terms of the whole soundscape of the music, in terms of frequency, and, when it comes to all the little home studios that we record in, how can we best use the space and what's going to work, what's not going to work. It's definitely been a time saver, I think, on that front.
Are you quite a practical person? Are you quite a practical thinker?
Yes and no. Can sometimes get a little bit, down in the weeds of like, oh, but this reflection might go like that. And then if we scatter it in this way, and it's like, well, realistically, does it sound good? It's like, yeah, well then turn your brain off.
Yeah, I think you are quite practical, Mark. You're practical and intelligent, yet creative.
This is my best day. Thank you.
I do think it's a bit criminal that we haven't done a clay animation clip, to be honest.
I know, imagine.
I know we both understand the time commitment that would involve.
However, if we start now, in 2 to 3 years, we could have a really banging clip.
We could have a 20-second clip. Are you a clay animation advocate, Alex?
Did you see the psychedelic porn crumpets videos they did on the last record?
No, I didn't.
They did clay animation ones, and they told the story over 3 videos, kind of set in this magical fantasy world with this Alice in Wonderland type character and a bounty hunter and people killing chocolates and cookies and stuff. It was all rather crazy, but it was great.
That sounds wonderful.
We've got Wallace and Grum over here as well. That's quite a big thing here.
Wallace and Grum was a heavy influence of our of my classroom teaching. I think Jared would you say the same?
Also, I would absolutely say the same.
Yeah.
You should do a clay animation video, because you've done rotoscope. Do clay animation, just work your way through all the different animation styles, video by video.
I think we could do it. Rick studied animation, I found out the other day.
Could we do an anime one where we all do like cool fight scenes? That would be really cool.
What would be your like secret move, Mark?
My secret move would be like just looking at you in a way that makes you feel so bad to be fighting at all that you give up the fight.
We kind of started off this chat by talking a little bit about touring, and you played a couple of shows a week ago. I feel like it would be fitting to come full circle and wrap this up on a memory from touring. Because you were side stage at Royal Blood at Splendor on the Grass, and you turn your head, and who do you see?
Hang on, is this a making up a memory, or is this a real memory?
This is a real memory that I've heard you talk about.
Ah, shit! I think maybe this is Sam's memory.
Oh
no! Who did he see?
Elon Musk.
Did he really?
I was probably with Little May.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, he said he turned and he saw Elon Musk making out with his girlfriend.
Oh, he told us that. Yeah, I remember hearing this story.
What an anecdote that would have been.
Well, I mean, to wrap it up slightly differently then, we've spoken a lot about how the way that you'll kind of get through things and you might take a weight off your shoulders is by writing. Is writing almost now part of your approach to tackling situations? Do you almost approach situations as much as a human as a writer and try and use it to work your way through things now? Honestly,
in the last sort of COVID, last year and a half or whatever, I've really tried to strip my identity of being a musician and try and figure out who I am without that. So I think my process now is to sort of just figure out the things that make me happy. So a lot of that is exercise and doing lots of nice things for myself, like eating healthily and meditating and spending lots of time in nature. And a part of that is writing, not so much music. So I try to step away from it, but writing thoughts and feelings. So yeah, I think writing words is very, very, very powerful. So is writing music. But yeah, I think recently I've tried to skip so much on the music thing just for a little break. To be a full person, be a person without that identity.
Were you surprised when you stripped it away at what you found?
Very, very surprised. I think it's really important learning to be okay with myself without the attachment of having this music goal and drive, and you know, it's all we've done as adults, you know. So it's scary to not be attached to that, but it's also really fulfilling to not be attached to it as well. I feel like I've come back at it with so much more vigor, and as we've spoken about, so much more openness and sensitivity to it all, which I think that's really important. It's allowed me to connect with what we do, like on a whole different level.